Oh, you didn't know? Your ass better call somebody! Yeah. So yesterday we did HAARP. And, I mean, we cracked the door open on HAARP, I guess. Can't even comfortably say we got through everything. We did a lot, and there were a couple other things that we needed. And then I was just thinking about it when part of the thing I was reading was like the EIPOC or something like that technology. But it's really strange how the official narrative with the HAARP shit is like, it's like one of these, just trust us. No, we're not going to tell you what we're doing and all that. No, it's totally open. You can come look anytime except for when you want to. But no, just trust us. And don't believe any of these conspiracy theories. The best part was the conspiracy theories, where they didn't even lay out, like, it wasn't like people think this and that and that's wrong, because they were just laying out the capabilities of HAARP, and then it was under the conspiracy theories banner. But that doesn't mean that's not real. You know, that doesn't mean that those conspiracy theories aren't factual, and that's how they were presented. That's what I just found so fascinating, is it's like, oh, here are the conspiracy theories, you know. HAARP can do this and 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 this, and you're like, okay, and where's the shoe drop? What's the conspiracy theory part? It's fascinating. You know, part of it'll be like, people think HAARP can control the weather, and then they're like, when HAARP can move the jet streams, but it's basically, they lay out all these things that HAARP can do, and then they're like, yeah, and that's under the control of the University of Alaska Fairbanks, can see into the ground, and it's used for communicating with submarines. I found that just fascinating. Like, it's fascinating how the submarine thing just keeps coming up, and I don't even mean it to. But it's like, to explain one nonsense bullshit technology, they're like, oh yeah, here's some more bullshit nonsense. It all fits together. I mean, the idea that HAARP, so the way it works would be, it shoots up the signal up into the ionosphere, where the ionosphere then beams it back down into said water. And then whatever submarine happens to be like in that area, they can communicate with the submarine. That's how they say they communicate with submarines. That, and they've laid down deep water and basically antenna that are like 60 miles long. 60 miles isn't shit. But to think like it goes up, they bounce it off the top and it comes down and then it hits the water, and what? That's somehow a secure communication. How would that even begin to be a secure communication? I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy that I guess I kind of always thought growing up that a lot of the stuff that falls under the conspiracy wagon or even just the official narrative is more than likely just, really complicated and unless you're educated this way or that way, you probably aren't going to be able to understand it. And that was sort of how I policed myself, Oh, well, I'm probably just not smart enough to understand it. I'm probably just not smart enough to understand it. But then you really start looking, and like, I consider myself to be a smart motherfucker. I'm well read. I don't struggle understanding things. I pick up things easily. I mean, literally, I go live every day, and nobody ever proves me wrong about anything. Like literally anything. It's fascinating, and it's uplifting, and it's inspiring, and it's motivating to know that I'm like the Mike Tyson in his prime of this conspiracy shit. And to just see how difficult people have, like, again, if I'm wrong, it should be something where you're like, oh, you're wrong, here, let me you're wrong because of this, and I'm like, oh man, I shouldn't have said that was stupid. I mean, when I was doing the whole submarine expose, the first 9 parts, communicating with them didn't even dawn on me. How do they communicate? But then you hear this shit and they say things like, oh, ELF waves can penetrate water as deep as 40 meters. Yeah, well, that's really not very deep as far as submarines go. So how do they communicate even deeper? More importantly, like I said, how does the submarine communicate back with the facility in the middle of Wisconsin? What? It's in Wisconsin? Well, that doesn't make any sense. But that's, and it looks like a dairy farm or some shit. It doesn't even look like, there's no antenna, there's nothing. Oh, you're saying that the telephone lines are the antennas? What? That sure doesn't seem very, advanced. It's just weird. It's a whole bunch of weird shit. And you would think it would be easier. You would think it would be easier to make myself wrong. To make a claim like submarines aren't real, and then I go look and it's like, oh, of course they are. Man, I was stupid. Look at all this clear-cut evidence and explanation that makes total sense. And you know, a lot of the times the trolls will be like, well, they don't explain it because it's top secret. And it's like, no, they do explain it. They actually do give you an explanation. It's just dumb. It just doesn't make sense. It's just because they give you an explanation doesn't mean that's real. If I told you that oranges grew on trees because, the little orange fairy comes through and sprinkles fairy orange dust on the trees, and then they sprout fruit out, well, that's an explanation. Doesn't mean it's correct, but it's an explanation. And this is all J technology. Don't know, let's of course, as always, understand that the main goal of this feed is to eliminate Israel and the J's. I'm just talking about different pieces. People always want evidence for the conspiracy. Give me evidence. And I'm like, it's all around you. You just have to look for it. I love that somebody would come here just to talk shit. Like, you come here daily just to talk shit. I must be doing something wrong. Looking ridiculous. Like, it's that level of stupid that I just can't wrap my head around. I know that if I were to, focus on somebody and watch their feed every day and all that stuff, I would, that means I like them. That means they're my guy. You need anything, bud? Yeah, you. You good? Need anything, just let me know. So we did HAARP yesterday. HAARP. Oh, you know what we didn't do? We didn't finish our video. I totally forgot about that. We gotta watch the rest of that movie. Maybe we'll do that. All day long, nonstop. Yep, that's me. All day long. Whenever somebody says something so easy to debunk, it totally, it takes away from all of their credibility. If you're willing to lie and just say something stupid just to get attention, and it's incorrect and it's easily disproven, then that means everything you say is nonsense. Oh, yeah. The ampuli of Morenzini. Got it. All right, so we did that. Let's do project overview. HAARP began operating. We did that, right? Research. HAARP's main goal is science research in the uppermost portion of the atmosphere, termed the ionosphere, right? Because you guys care about that shit, right? Like submarines being fake. What does that even mean? I don't even know about that whole fake thing. But okay, whatever. Like, this is what stupid does. Like, you obviously you can't actually debunk what I'm saying, so you're gonna say stupid shit. All right, so we had gotten to ELF, and then we had gone off in another direction, right? So the here's some of the main capabilities of HAARP include generating very low frequency radio waves by modulated heating of the aurora electrojet. An electrojet is an electric current which travels around the E region of the Earth's ionosphere. Oh, so this is another one of those things that you 100% have to trust the liars on. Gotcha. Number two, generating artificial air glow, which is typically subvisual but routinely detectable. Under certain geophysical conditions and transmitter configurations, it can be bright enough to observe with the unaided eye. So that's them saying ergo. That's them saying the aurora borealis is they can fake it. They can create it. Number three, generating extremely low frequency ELF waves in the range of zero point 0.1 hertz in the ELF waves in the 0. 0.1 hertz range. These are next to impossible to produce any other way because the length of the antenna is dictated by the wavelength of the signal it emits or receives. So they're saying there's no way they can create ELF waves other than this. Number four, generating Whistler mode VLF signals that enter the magnetosphere and propagate to the other hemisphere. Sorry, my phone has some shit on it that sometimes gets in my way. Interacting with the Van Allen radiation belt particles along the way. Gotcha. The Van Allen radiation belt. The Van Allen radiation belt is a zone of energetic charged particles, most of which originate from the solar wind. Do you guys get that? I'm sorry, but solar wind in a vacuum. What creates the wind? The sun. The sun's ejections create the wind that are captured by and held around a planet by that planet's magnetosphere. Earth has two such belts, and sometimes others may be temporarily created. The belts are named after James Van Allen, who published an article describing the belts in 1958. Think about that. 1958. So this is actually before we supposedly went to the moon. So they did know about the Van Allen radiation belts. That's fucking really interesting because there's an interview with astronauts. A group of astronauts are being interviewed like on a panel, and somebody asks how did they get through the Van Allen radiation belts, and they said they didn't know about them yet, so that's how they got through them. But that Van Allen did it in 58, so that's a lie. The fact is, they didn't know, or I mean, they absolutely knew. Like they lied. That's just strange. It's just we didn't know about them. How did you not know about them? Earth's two main belts extend from an altitude of about 640 to 58,000 kilometers, or 400 miles to 36,040 miles. Not 36,039, not 36,041. 36,040. Above the Earth's surface, in which radiation levels vary. The belts are in the inner region of the Earth's magnetic field. They trap energetic electrons and protons. Other nuclei, such as alpha particles, are less prevalent. Most of the particles from the belts are thought to come from solar wind, while others arrive as cosmic rays. Solar wind and cosmic rays, where's the issue? By trapping the solar wind, the magnetic field deflects those energetic particles and protects the atmosphere from destruction. The belts endanger satellites. Do they? Because I've never heard of that. It's actually in the history of satellites, there's only been one that's been destroyed by flying debris, such as a meteor or something like that. What's up, Judy? You got something to say? Huh? If you could say one thing, what would you say? That's a good one. He said die pedophiles. The belts endanger satellites, which must have their sensitive components protected with adequate shielding as they spend significant time near that zone. What do you mean near that zone? Don't they live in that zone? Apollo astronauts going through the Van Allen radiation belts received a very low and harmless dose of radiation. That's interesting. In 2013, the Van Allen probes detected a distant third radiation belt, which persisted for 4 weeks. Then it left. Discovery. All right, here we go. This should be really good. Really good. Kristen, with a K. Kristen Birkland, Carl Stomer, Nicholas Christofilos, and Enrico Medi had investigated the possibility of trapped charged particles in 1895. It's funny to me because every time I read this kind of shit, right? And I know the world was clearly not what we're told. Like when you look at, again, the history of Chicago, the idea of submarines, the first tunnel under the Thames, and just you look the bridges being, you look at all this shit, castles, skyscrapers, churches. You look at all this shit, and clearly something else was going on. But when you look at what we're told, like think about 1895. You know, the top hat people walking around, horse-drawn carriages are everywhere. 1895 is when the first power tools sort of appear. And yet, these guys are talking about trapped charged particles in the atmosphere, I guess, of trapped charged particles in 1895, forming a theoretical basis for the formation of radiation belts. Yep. The second Soviet satellite, Sputnik 2, which had detectors designed by Sergei Vernov, followed by the U.S. satellite Explorer 1 and Explorer 3, confirmed the existence of the belt in early '58. Later, named after James Van Allen from the University of Iowa. The trapped radiation was first mapped by Explorer 4, Pioneer 3, and Luna 1. Okay, so these are some of my favorite comments. These long ones where somebody is talking to other people, I guess. Not talking to the person doing the feed, and definitely not talking about what the person's talking about. Let's see. This dude has has to do one stream sitting the fuck down. I know pacing like that helps him think like chewing gum, but still, it shows a lack of discipline in the mind, like a kid that can't control his hands. Yeah, that's what it is. That's what it is. So, of all the things you could say, that's it. If I was sitting down, then he could actually address the things that are being talked about time and time again. Then he's the type of guy that will deny being a pedo, or the type of guy that thinks genocide isn't cool and all that. If I was sitting down, that's the thing that's holding him back. And again, instead of addressing anything, that's a long comment, right? Instead of being like, dude, you are wrong about this because of this, it's because I'm not sitting down. Is this, what if I brushed my hair? Should I brush my hair too? Don't worry, the next time you guys see me, my face will be shaved. Will that help? Then you'll be able to do it. The term Van Allen belts refers specifically to the radiation belt surrounding the Earth. However, similar radiation belts have been discovered around other planets. The Sun does not support long-term radiation belts, as it lacks a stable global dipole field. The Earth's atmosphere limits the belt's particles to regions above 200 kilometers and between and below 1,000, or 124 miles to 620 miles. 124 miles, yes. Exactly. Where the belts do not exist past 8 Earth radii, the belts are confined to a volume which extends about 65 degrees, I guess, on either side of the celestial equator. Research. The NASA Van Allen probe's mission aims at understanding, to the point of predictability, how populations of relativistic electrons and ions in space form and change in response to changes in solar activity and the solar wind. NASA Institute for Advanced Concepts funded studies have proposed magnetic scoops that collect antimatter that naturally occurs in the Van Allen belts of Earth, although only about 10 micrograms of antiprotons are estimated to exist in the entire antimatter, antiprotons, 10 micrograms. Yeah, gotcha. So how are we going to scoop it out if it's only 10 micrograms in the entire thing? It's amazing how they know how to build these machines to test for shit that they didn't know existed. Isn't that convenient? It's like a few years ago when they said that a machine detected gravity waves for the first time. How did you build a machine to detect gravity waves if you never experienced them before? How would that even work? How would you know it worked? Like, you built a machine to detect something you didn't know necessarily existed? Like, what? And what machine was that? What was the gravity wave detector? Seek and Destroy, Metallica. Okay. Good song. The Van Allen probe's mission successfully launched on October 30th, 2012. The primary mission was scheduled to last 2 years, with expendables expected to last 4. Oh, your cousin deployed in a submarine for 65 days without surfacing. You're telling me he lied. You're, Y-O-U-R, telling me he lied. He's in the Navy. Yeah. Do you honestly think military people tell non-military people the truth? Doesn't matter if you're cousins or anything. Do you honestly think if the military says, don't say this, they're going to be like, well, that's my cousin. I have to tell him. 55 days without resurfacing. they had enough air to last 55 days. I mean, it's just stupid. It's just stupid. Whatever. If you think submarines exist, cool. Right? You clearly, like, you're saying, so wait, my cousin told me this is true, so you're saying that's not true? It's not like you looked into it or tried to figure it out. You're just thinking your military cousin is going to tell a civilian the truth no matter what. That makes sense. The probes were deactivated in 2019 after running out of fuel and are expected to deorbit during the 2030s. Gee, hopefully they deorbit over the water and don't fall on something important, don't you think? I love how they say these things like like with the lunar rover, right? The lunar rover was supposed to last like 60 days, and like 16 years later it was still going. Nobody's there to wipe anything off. Nobody's there to fix nothing like that. It's just still just moving all along. And the thing is, it actually happened to die either a week before or a week after the new probe landed. Yeah, wow, what an amazing coincidence. Let's see, terrible. And I the show that pretended they were on a spaceship. He told me he was waking up groggy every day due to low oxygen levels because the submarine produces oxygen using the water around it. But he sits at low oxygen levels and he continued to show. Right. So the idea of electrolysis. So what you essentially believe is that they take the salty seawater and they desalinate it. They put it through the process to take the salt out. Then they use an electrical charge to separate the oxygen molecules from the so H2O. So there's two for every one molecule of oxygen. There's two hydrogens. So somehow they're taking all of the so I don't even know how that works. When you take the oxygen out of the water, then what do you have? If you take the O out of the H2O, what's left over? What form is that hydrogen in? Is it still a liquid? But somehow they electrify the water, because obviously, I mean, that's what you've always heard, right? You want to produce oxygen, electrify water. Makes sense. They electrify the water. The oxygen is then released and captured in the oxygen catcher machine, and then it's distributed throughout the sub. Go ahead and look up the machine that they use. Go ahead and see if you can try to find more information than I just told you about how that whole process works. Because I couldn't. Yes, they have scrubbers. Right, that's what they say. They have scrubbers. That the scrubbers are supposed to deal with the carbon dioxide that we breathe out and the moisture that we breathe out. That's what the scrubbers do. They don't take the air and scrub it and then make the oxygen like you don't scrub air and then it turns back into breathable oxygen. It's really fucking dumb. It really is dumb. But at least you're trying. I give you that much. At least you're trying. Most people don't even try to, they don't have very much to say. Did Seagate submarine not implode seeing the Titanic, or did that just not happen to you? I mean, why do you believe that shit happened? Did you see some video or something? Were you there? You're basically like saying, dude, I saw it on TV. Why are you saying the thing I saw on TV wasn't real? Do you honestly think Kobe Bryant died in a helicopter crash? Kobe Bryant dies in a helicopter crash. There's literally no evidence to show. There was supposedly a couple of mountain bikers that had the helmet cams. They got there before anyone else did. And the video shows them like going through the scene, kind of like asking, like, what the fuck is going on here? It doesn't look like a helicopter crash. It's not like this huge scorched earth and all this wreckage and everything. There's fire and shit, but and there's debris, but it's not necessarily like a full-on Black Mamba helicopter. There's definitely, I think there was supposedly like 11 people on board, 6 of which were adults. There's not 6 charred bodies laying on the ground. You don't see anything like that. But most importantly, see, this is the part, we can argue about the legitimacy of the crash and all that. For me, I always like finding one little thing that seems like it's just totally out of place and doesn't make sense. Because if one thing is off, then the rest is off. Like with the Trump shooting, right? Where are all the cell phone videos and live feeds from all the people that were at the event? There should be thousands of tens of thousands of people were there. There should be thousands of videos of people fucking, I was there, here's my footage, you don't see that. It literally just doesn't exist. And the same thing goes with oh fuck, what was I just talking about? I knew I shouldn't have mentioned this. I knew I shouldn't have mentioned the Trump thing. I'd forget what the fuck I was saying. Oh yeah, with the Kobe thing, right? The Kobe thing. So, what just totally defies explanation when it comes to the Kobe thing is where was the fucking funeral? The funeral. Kobe Bryant died. And the narrative is that his wife, quote, called the media and asked them not to show up. So every single photojournalist, every single inquirer, anyone everywhere was like, okay, Kobe's wife, we won't show up. We won't use telescopic lenses to take photos from far away. We won't do anything like that. How does that make sense to you? Explain to me how there's a funeral for Kobe Bryant that you know nothing about. You can find the supposed date, but even the time when it was supposed to happen, the people that you would think would be there were doing other shit. Or they were doing other shit later that day and there was never any interruption in their schedule. Now it's, you're a hypocrite. That's your problem. Yep, I'm a hypocrite now. Gotta love it. I went down the rabbit hole. You ain't dumb. You have to just accept some things. It doesn't do you any good. A singles you out people went to live their life and die. Live their life and die. There, THER. I can't even begin to. But I've been like, I didn't believe the craft. Too. T.O. But I've stopped trying not to believe everything. You're not even making sense. Sorry. You know, you see these types of narratives, and like, you know, for me, I've said for years, all of these things. I'm sort of mad at myself for talking about it, but you know, it's evidence towards the main goal. But everything is just a distraction. HAARP, chemtrails, Kobe Bryant, Trump, the Hollywood pedo stuff, the vaccines, you know, all of these conspiracies are just distractions. Because the truth is, we can't answer for any of those conspiracies until we, Goyim, unify and overthrow the Jays that control our narrative. So everything that you know, everything that like anything that anybody is saying to me, even though 90% of the people don't actually make any reasonable comments, you know, every comment is valuable. It shows you what I'm talking about. Trust me, especially when you consider all these people that supposedly like hate me, or they like whatever the negative reason is, because they don't contribute anything positively. They don't ever, like, if they could debunk something I said, they absolutely would. They're here trying to trip me up, trying to, I'm a loser and I'm all these things. Well, if all of those things are your goal, then me sitting here selling porky pies should be the easiest thing for you to do. Just debunk the things I'm saying. But they don't. They can't. They don't even try. You don't say anything that begets a response. Right. So I say nothing. And yet, day after day after day, you come and tell me what I'm wrong about when I'm literally reading to you the narrative we're supposed to know. And I guess that's nothing. I mean, me saying that there's no videos from the Trump shooting, that's, who cares? That's nothing. Me saying that there was no Kobe Bryant funeral, that's just nothing. That's nothing. Me talking about these disgusting piece of shit Jays that control the narrative, I'm not saying anything. Nothing. That doesn't beget a response. That doesn't warrant a response. Doesn't beget a response. That doesn't warrant a response. No. I just, you're just going to sit here and talk a bunch of dumb shit for hours on end. Gotcha. Anyway, you have to understand why I just totally, like, I end up not reading the fucking comments, because it's not like I'm going to get anything out of the comments, right? The comments do enough. They all help me. You know, that's literally all it comes down to. If with everything I'm saying, the only thing you can say is, "Oh, you're on meth." Okay. If I was smoking all of the meth, would that make this shit any different? Would that make Team Jorge not real? Would that make the Samson option not real? Would that make any of this shit more or less real? No. So, you know, I know you're not going to actually say anything. I mean, I'm going to miss a few comments that might actually, you know, be good. And I apologize for that. But for the most part, it's all just stupid. This Marissa, oh, is that the Marissa dumbass? Oh, is that the one that believes that all of the men in Hollywood are women and all the women are men? And if you don't believe it, she gets mad. So weird. She can't actually, she said to me, I said, so let's just say that was true. How would that matter anyway? If they were all if all the men and women's roles, she goes, well, because that makes me be gay. If I think a dude is attractive and it's really a woman, that makes me gay. Like, are you that stupid? For real? They have this super big plan where they somehow are able to figure out that at a young age, they look at that little boy, and they go, all right, that little boy is going to be the next Beyonce. And then that one's going to be Reba McEntire. And then they know that these guys are going to be talented. They're going to have the ability to sing from babies. So they switch them into from boys to girls. And I mean, it's just so stupid. And at the end of the day, they don't even tell us. It's a secret that's kept secret. And it's just, so what's the fucking point? If we don't even know that we're secretly attracted to dudes and blah, it's just so stupid. This is a stupid person. Anybody who believes that whole Hollywood transgender blah, 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 that is a fucking bigot who is just trying to justify their bigotry. You know, if you say something like, well, gay is just really weird to me and I don't get it. Trans is just really weird to me and I don't get it. That's totally cool. There's nothing wrong with that. You're not supposed to get everything. But as soon as you say that they don't get to exist or whatever because you don't get it, that's a whole different thing. You know, and most people aren't that way. They try to justify, oh, I'm just trying to protect the children. I'm just trying to protect the children. No, I don't know what you're talking about. Must have been some other dumbass Marissa. Sorry. Okay. I'm okay with. Look, I was wrong. Oh my God, I was wrong. It was another dumbass Marissa who's a fan of Jesse Hall. Jesse Hall and the Missing Link. Just so you guys know, if you're familiar with Jesse Hall and you think that guy, he's a bitch. He's a dumb, cowardly bitch. And I'm that close to calling him controlled opposition. I mean, he's given his platform because he does their bidding. Whether he realizes it or not, he's a bitch. Jesse, the conspiracy theory guru, asked me, why do I focus on the J so much if I know it's going to make people mad at me? Why do I focus on religion so much if I know it's going to make people mad at me? Like, oh, so you only talk about things that going to make everyone feel all happy? Is that how you do it? Is that how that works? Gulf of America. Yeah. Trump's an idiot, man. Trump is an idiot. It's and see, like look at all of it. He appeals to idiots because they go, look, if someone like him can make it, well, I can fucking make it too. Because look how stupid he is. I'm stupid. Look at me, I'm stupid.
Your daddy's not giving you $1 million to start your shit off with.
A small $1 million loan. Small. All right. The Van Allen probe's mission successfully launched August 12, 2012. The primary mission was scheduled to, we already did this, last 2 years, and to deorbit during the 30s. NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center messages the Living with a Star program of the Living with a Star program is a NASA scientific program to study those aspects of the connected Sun-Earth system that directly affect life and society. Look at that. That looks fucking professional, doesn't it? Look at that goofy ass logo. That's fucking silly. Of which the Van Allen probes were a project along with Solar Dynamics Observatory. The Applied Physics Laboratory was responsible for the implementation and instrument management for the Van Allen probes. See, this is one of these really great examples of how this system works, right? So, what they do is provide you with a bunch of nonsense details. Oh yeah, they made those rocks, but they just cooled. The earth cooled and made the rocks. Look, I wonder who's telling us this stuff. Let's see. Is the person creating the narrative or giving us the narrative going to be chosen? What do you think the chances are? Let's see. Do. Let's see. Come on, show us the fat guy. I saw him out of the corner of my eye, but let's just see. What do you think? Very much could be. Could you imagine a little goofy yarmulke on his head? I could. All right. Radiation belts exist around other planets and moons in the solar system that have magnetic fields powerful and stable enough to sustain them. Radiation belts have been detected. Oh, like I said, they give you a bunch of these fucking nonsense details. That's what I was saying. All of this nonsense detail bullshit. Instead of giving you the nuts and bolts. Well, how do they do this? How do they figure this out? What do they test it with? What is this? What is that? Like, they just yada yada over that shit. But they're going to give you a bunch of this other nonsense details. God damn it. God damn it, Bobby. Let's see. Have been detected around Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. Though, or through In situ observations? In situ? What is in situ? INSITU. What is an in situ observation? Such as by Galileo spacecraft and Juno spacecraft at Jupiter, Cassini-Huygens at Saturn, and flybys from the Voyager program and Pioneer program. Totally makes sense then. Observations of radio emissions from highly energetic particles that are trapped in a planet's magnetic field have also been used to remotely detect radiation belts, including at Jupiter. Okay, that sounded back like back talk to me. Can you listen to this real quick? Observations of radio emissions from highly energetic particles that are trapped in a planet's magnetic field have also been used to remotely detect radiation belts, including at Jupiter. Are they just saying that they're using this, which detects this, which detects this, which detects this? Isn't that what that says?
I guess, yeah. Everything they say is so misleading.
And at the ultra cool, what's ultra cool? Is ultra cool? Is that a ultra cool? One word.
I've never heard of that.
And at the ultra cool dwarf, which I assume is a dwarf star. At the ultra cool dwarf, who's that person? What struck is that?
I think that's Keith. No. I thought that was Keith's.
At the ultra cool dwarf LSR, blah 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 blah.
Did you get into it?
I didn't see. It's been there all night. It is possible that Mercury planet may be able to trap charged particles in its magnetic field, although its highly dynamic magnetosphere, which varies on the order of minutes. Right. Right. So we can detect it even though it only exists for minutes at a time. I mean, what is he like? What plow situation is he? He's all ready for snow and ice, and it's not like that outside. Will you go check? Well, she's home. It is possible that Mercury. It varies on the order of minutes. May not be able to sustain stable radiation belts. Venus and Mars do not have radiation belts. Venus and Mars do not have radiation belts as their magnetospheric configurations do not trap energetic charged particles in orbit around the planet. That's convenient. Geomagnetic storms can cause electron density to increase or decrease relatively quickly, i.e., approximately 1 day or less. Longer timescale processes determine the overall configuration of the belts. After electron injection increases electron density, electron density is often observed to decay exponentially. Those decay time constants are called lifetimes. Measurements from the Van Allen probe B's magnetic electron ion spectrometer, MAG-EIS, show long electron lifetimes, i.e. longer than 100 days, in the inner belt. Short electron lifetimes of around 1 or 2 days are observed in the slot between the belts, And energy-dependent electron lifetimes of roughly 5 to 20 days are found in the outer belts. Boy, that's interesting. This is really, really interesting. All right. Antimatter confinement. In 2011, a study confirmed earlier speculation. It's like the Lagrange points speculated in 1770s, but turned out to be true. Here, hang on a second. Oh, I guess not. I thought the comments had been paused. All right. The payload for antimatter exploration and light nuclei astrophysics. Pamela. Payload for antimatter exploration and light nuclei astrophysics. That's Pamela. Of course, they leave out an F and A, and then they hyphenate light nuclei, so it works out. Experiment. The Pamela experiment detected levels of antiprotons. Orders. Okay. Detected levels of antiprotons orders of magnitude higher than are expected from normal particle decays. The Pamela experiment detected levels of antiprotons orders of magnitude higher than are expected from normal particle decays while passing through the South Atlantic anomaly. The South Atlantic anomaly. Oh, there's an anomaly that so if you have to look here, well, it's an anomaly. It's in the South Atlantic too. They're really fucking the comments up today. Sorry guys, I can't see the comments anymore. They've shut them down. So you guys can keep commenting, but I can't. I can't read them. This suggests the Van Allen belts confine a significant flux of antiprotons produced by the interaction of the Earth's upper atmosphere with cosmic rays. The energy of the antiprotons has been measured in the range of 60 to 750 MeV, capital M, lowercase e, capital V. A very high energy release in antimatter annihilation has led to proposals to harness the antiprotons for spacecraft propulsion. The concept relies on the development of antimatter collectors and containers. You guys, doesn't bother you that they do this shit? It doesn't bother you that they say these things? It doesn't bother you that they've stopped me being able to read new comments? Isn't that strange? Implications for space travel. All right, so that was us looking at the Van Allen radiation belts. I want to look up Van Allen real quick. James Van Allen, born September 7, 1914, died August 9th, 2006. Man, he was old. Was an American space physicist at the University of Iowa. He was instrumental in establishing the field of magnetospheric research in space. In 58, he figured this shit out. James Alfred Van Allen, Mount Pleasant, Iowa, died in Iowa. He never didn't go anywhere. He was Iowa fucking bred and raised. Education, Iowa Wesleyan College, got his BS. University of Iowa, got his master's and his PhD. Time Magazine Man of the Year in 1960. You know who else was? Hitler. They just changed it. They removed it. All right. The Van Allen radiation belts were named after him, following his discovery using Geiger-Müller tube instruments on the 1958 satellites Explorer 1, Explorer 3, and Pioneer 3 during the International Geophysical Year. International Geophysical Year. Van Allen led the scientific community in putting scientific research instruments on space satellites. So they weren't doing that before. When they were, the whole time, he was like, hey guys, you know all those satellites were sending, hey, maybe we should put some scientific instrumentation on there. And they were like, damn, that's right, we should have done that. How come nobody thought about that before? Here, this is going to be good. Early life and education. I'm sure there's a good portion here, right? Born on September 7, 1914, on a small farm near Mount Pleasant, Iowa. As a child, he was fascinated by mechanical and electrical devices and was an avid reader of popular mechanics and popular science magazines. Of course he was. He once horrified his mother by constructing a Tesla coil that produced foot-long sparks and caused his hair to stand on end. That's amazing. That is fucking amazing. Kid was making a Tesla coil based on what? I mean, we're talking about as a kid, right? So if he's born in September of 1914, by 24 he's 10 years old, and by 34 he's 20 years old. So somewhere between like 1930, I would imagine, somewhere by 19 or before 1930, he built a Tesla coil based on the plethora of information that was available to him on his farm in Iowa. Or was it because he was, popular science was like, hey, check out these Tesla coils. And he was like, sweet, I have Tesla coil making materials laying around the farm. Let me see what I can do here. Does that make sense? A fellowship allowed him to continue studying nuclear physics at the Carnegie Institution in Washington, D.C. At least he left. Where he also became immersed in research in geomagnetism, cosmic rays, auroral physics, and the physics of Earth's upper atmosphere. That's his lower years in education. And there's literally no dates here. It's just he was born September 7, 1914, and then at some point he builds a coil, and then at some point he gets a fellowship to the Carnegie Institution in Washington. Gotcha. In August of 39, so at 25, Van Allen joined the Department of Terrestrial Magnetism, DTM, of the Carnegie Institution in Washington, D.C. as a Carnegie Research Fellow. Gotta love that. I want to be like, his job is to be a research fellow. How does that work? How do you get paid in that? What is the measurement by which you get paid? Like, what could you possibly produce? Oh yeah, no, I swear, I was totally researching that, and I need to get paid for my time. And I'm sure he lived a very wealthy fucking life, so interesting. In the summer of 1940, he joined the DTM's national defense efforts with his appointment to a staff position in Section T with the National Defense Research Committee, NDRC. So by 1940, he's 36 years old. No, 26 years old. 26 years old. Yeah, 26 years old. So he's right at that last year of age where they're going to take him, I guess. Where he worked on the development of photoelectric and radio proximity fuses, which are detonators that increase the effectiveness of anti-aircraft fire. Well, fucking A, man. Right on. So does he get like medals and shit? Are we going to say he had medals too? They love doing that. They love saying their people had like medals and awards every single time. I still think Rickover is a much more fascinating story than this one. But I haven't gotten very far, so. Rickover grew up speaking only Yiddish in a small neighborhood, in a small village where, they wouldn't let him go to regular school, so he went to only Hebrew schools for most of his life, and then he somehow became the guy that invented the nuclear submarine. And good luck figuring it out. I mean, in the 60s, 60? It's either 60 or 50s, can't remember. It's either 62 or 52, whatever. They decide they need nuclear-powered submarines, and he's like, okay, hang on. And figures it out. I mean, the Rickover story is just fascinating. It's fascinating because it's like, again, you would go into it thinking one thing, and I don't know how you could maintain that, thinking it's a real, like, believable story after spending any time on it. Which are detonated. Another NDRC project later became the atomic bomb Manhattan Project. So he worked on that too in 1941. With the outbreak of World War II, it was an outbreak, One day, patient zero was just walking along the street. He was like, World War II, and started just spreading World War II all over the place. Just like COVID sauce. With the outbreak of World War II, the proximity fuse work was transferred to the newly created Applied Physics Laboratory, APL, of Johns Hopkins University. Excuse me, I have to get all this meth and coke out of my nose real quick. That's what you do when you do drugs, right? You blow your nose constantly. I know that's what I always did when I used to snort drugs. He worked on improving the ruggedness of vacuum tubes subject to the vibration from a gun battery. The work at APL resulted in a new generation of radio proximity fuses for anti-aircraft defense of ships and for shore bombardment, which never happens here. Van Allen was commissioned as a U.S. Navy lieutenant. There we go. In November 1942. Man, he is just progressing. And served for 16 months on a succession of South Pacific Fleet destroyers, instructing gunnery officers and conducting tests on his artillery fusers. He was an assistant staff gunnery officer on the battleship USS Washington when the ship successfully defended itself against a Japanese attack during the Battle of the Philippine Sea. Always the same shit. They always have this short period where they were involved in something really spectacular, and because of their efforts, it's literally the same. It's the same ChatGPT narrative. They program ChatGPT to create these characters, give them their backstories, and each one has to hit a certain number of things, and the ChatGPT just makes sure it's all spread out so they're not overlapping necessarily. Well, they're not stepping on each other's toes. They're all overlapping, but it's all the same fucking narrative. For his actions at the Pacific, Van Allen was awarded 4 battle stars. What did I tell you when I first read this? We've been studying this for a long time. I'm telling you, it's always the same. They're always these war heroes. There's no information about their youth. They just sort of, they started on a farm and just built a Tesla coil. He was promoted to lieutenant commander in 46. 6 years later, he's a commander, lieutenant commander. My service as a naval officer was, far and away, the most broadening experience of my lifetime, he wrote in a 1990 autobiographical essay. 1946 to 1954, Aerobee and Raccoon discharged from the Navy in 46. Van Allen returned to civilian life at APL. He organized and directed a team at Johns Hopkins University to conduct high-altitude experiments using V-2 rockets captured from the Germans at the end of the World War II. God, there we go again. All these wide things, and then they always funnel down into a few categories. Van Allen decided a small sounding rocket was needed for upper atmosphere research. Oh, a small sounding rocket. What's a sounding rocket? A sounding rocket, or rocket Sunday, sometimes called a research rocket or a suborbital rocket. Why would it be called all these different things? Is an instrument carrying rocket designed to take measurements and perform scientific experiments during its suborbital flight. The rockets are used to launch instruments from 48 to 150 kilometers, 30 to 90 miles above the surface of the Earth, the altitude generally between weather balloons and satellites. The maximum altitude for balloons is about 25 miles, 40 kilometers. And the minimum for satellites is approximately 121 kilometers or 75 miles. So there's that 50 mile space. Certain sounding rockets have an apogee between 1,000 and 1,500 kilometers. 16, did I say kilometers? I meant kilometers, sorry. 620 and 930 miles, such as the Black Brant X and X, or Black Brant 10 and Black Brant 12, which is the maximum apogee of their class. For certain purposes, sounding rockets may be flown to altitudes as high as 3,000 kilometers to allow observing times of around 40 minutes to provide geospherical observations of the magnetosphere, ionosphere, thermosphere, and mesosphere. Do you know how stupid it is to say that we can fly objects to Mars, leave them there, and then communicate with them and all that? But we can't build things that are going to sustain for longer than 40 minutes, and we have a hard time studying the upper atmosphere. Well, we could fly to fucking wherever. Why would that be difficult? If it's true. Sounding rockets have been used. Wow, this is nice not having the comments, actually. You know? There's not a lot of stupid shit sneaking through that I can't fucking, that distract me. I don't get distracted nearly as easy because I don't happen to catch one of the stupid comments. Thanks, YouTube, for making this easier. Sounding rockets have been used for the examination of the atmospheric nuclear test by revealing the passage of the shock wave through the atmosphere. In more recent times, sounding rockets have been used for other nuclear weapons research. Oh, well, that's good. Sounding rockets often use military surplus motors. NASA routinely fires the Terrier Mk-70 boosted improved Orion, lifting 270 to 40 kgs, or kilograms, 600 to 1,000 pounds, payloads into the exoatmospheric region between 97 and 201 kilometers, or 60 and 125 miles. So what are these payloads? I don't understand. What are these payloads that are getting dropped off in the exoatmospheric region? Seems strange. Okay, back to this. Back to, what's his name? James Van Allen. This is supposed to be about James Van Allen. He decided a small sounding rocket was needed for upper rescue. The Aerojet WAC Corporal and the Bumblebee missile were developed under a U.S. Navy program. He drew specifications for the Aerobee sounding rocket and headed the committee that convinced the U.S. government to produce it. The first, I mean, again, how would they have to convince the government, hey, look, we can do this? Like, isn't this what we're doing? Yeah. The first instrument carrying Aerobee was the A5. Launched on March 5th, 1948. Oh, man. From White Sands, New Mexico, carrying instruments for cosmic radiation research, reaching an altitude of 117.5 kilometers. Why is this in kilometers and shit? Aren't we in the United States? Why is this US-based bullshit in kilometers? Van Allen was elected chairman of the V2 Upper Atmospheric Panel on December 29th, 1947. We just went back in time. The panel was renamed Upper Atmospheric Rocket Research Panel on March 18th, 1948. Now that's after the rocket was launched. They renamed it. Why? Why? Then, Rocket and Satellite Research Panel on April 29th, 1948. So a month later, they're changing the name again? The panel suspended operations on May 19th, 1960, and had a reunion on February 2nd, 1968. February. Not February. Everyone says February, and that's not the fucking word. It's February. Look at how it's spelled. Go ahead, spell it in your comments right now and see if I'm wrong. Why do you say February? Commander Lee Lewis, Commander G. Havorson, SF Singer, and James A. Van Allen developed the idea for the raccoon, ROCKOON, on March 1st, 1949, during the Aerobee rocket firing cruise on the research vessel USS Norton Sound. What? He developed the idea. He developed the idea. He developed the idea for it. They know the date, March 1st, that he was like, hey, I got an idea. On April 5th, 1950, Van Allen left the Applied Research Laboratory to accept a John Simon Guggenheim Memorial Foundation Research Fellowship at the Brookhaven National Laboratory. How much you think that fellowship pays? They do this all the time. They have these imaginary positions that essentially are funded through taxpayer dollars that are just funneled into these organizations that are then paid up. But these people make incredible salaries, and he doesn't do shit. He doesn't do shit. He hangs out with his buddies all day, and they shoot rockets and shit. It's got to be kind of fun, don't you think? I'm not saying these people are just dumb playing with yo-yos. They're definitely like fucking with shit and creating weapons and all that stuff. But these, like, you couldn't get a Guggenheim Memorial Foundation fellowship at the Brookhaven National Research Laboratory. Oh, it's funny. Brookhaven National Research Laboratory is purple. That means I've looked it up before. And this is the BNL is a United States Department of Energy National Laboratory located in Upton, New York, a hamlet of the town of Brookhaven. It was formally established in 1947 at the site of Camp Upton, a former U.S. Army base on Long Island, located approximately 60 miles, blah, blah, blah. Research at BNL includes nuclear and high energy physics, energy science and technology, environmental and bioscience, and nanoscience and national security. That's what it is. The 5,300 acre campus contains several large research facilities, including the relativistic heavy ion collider and National Synchrotron Light Source 2. Did you guys know that we have a Hadron Collider here in the United States? Did you guys know that? And it's been here since 1947. So, at least 1947, they were able to build large tunnel systems that they could then what? How's it work? Line with magnets and fire fucking hadron ions at each other and shit like that. They just developed this shit. Think about it. Think about what you're told 1940s technology is. Think about cars from the 1940s, airplanes and shit, big propeller planes, you know. But think about how because we don't really see cars from the 40s. You know, it's like the 50s are where it really starts taking off and the classic cars, but you don't see a lot of cars from the 30s and the 40s. And it seems like the cars you do see, they look like all those really old wagon looking, they look like, you know, horse-drawn chariots without the horse. And then suddenly in the 50s, we just sort of we're like, let's make cars, these gigantic boats. Suddenly, the technology just leaps, and we're making completely different cars than we used to make. Think about that. And then they didn't have power steering. If you had air conditioning, that was a fucking luxury. The radios were shit if they even had them. You know, literally everything about it was like the car, the seats were kind of, they were big beds actually. So your grandparents, by the way, were fucking like crazy. Your grandfather's probably not your grandfather, but they didn't have Maury back then. So, but think about the technology that existed back then. Think about TVs, telephones, and shit. Hello. Think about how crazy that is. And yet, these same people are building large hadron colliders. These same people are building nuclear submarines. You know, these same people are doing atomic energy commissions and blah. Think about that shit. Does that make sense to you? So, and like I say, all of the fucking, you know, the strings in this string theory, they all end up braiding together towards the bottom. So now we have this guy who has, he has, you know, he's a high-ranking military man with a bunch of awards. He's worked on the Manhattan Project. He's now working at the Large Hadron, or the Hadron Collider that we have here in the States. It still exists, still operates today. And he's also the guy that the Van Allen radiation belts are named after. I mean, look at all of this shit. Look at all this shit. This guy is just, man, he was just awesome, huh? He's like a Ben Franklin kind of character. The following year, 1951, Van Allen accepted the position as head of physics of the physics department at the University of Iowa. So, this guy he develops the idea for the raccoon, which is a sounding rocket that, rather than being lit immediately while still on the ground, is first carried into the upper atmosphere by a gas-filled balloon, then separated from the balloon and ignited. This allows the rocket to achieve a higher altitude, as the rocket does not have to move under the power does not have to move under power through the lower and thicker layers of the atmosphere. There you go. He invented that. It took all that time for somebody to be like, hey, let's just launch it from a higher position. Good thing he invented those fuses, huh? But he had the idea for that while on the research vessel USS Norton Sound, which is this bad boy. Again, we're building that in 1949, right? Well, we had that in 1949. This thing was built, it was laid down September 7th, 1942, and launched on November 28th, 1943. Commissioned January 8th, 1945, and decommissioned August 10th, 1962, and then December 11th, 1968. It was reclassified August 8th, 1951. It was stricken January 26th, 1987. It had a 14,000 tons full load for its displacement, which means its buoyancy in the water. It was 540 feet and 5 inches long. Its beam isn't beam the width, 69 feet 3 inches, and draft, isn't that the height? 22 feet 3 inches. Its propulsion was steam turbines, 4 times boilers, 2 times shaft, and 12,000 SHP, 9.0 MW. It could travel at 18 knots, 33 kilometers per hour. Complacement 1,247 as commissioned, 540 after conversion to AVM-1. Sensors and processing systems, various, including testing of AN-SPG 59, AN-SPY1, and AN-SPQ9, of course. Arrangement varied over her career, especially as a test vessel. Norton Sound was laid down September 7, 1942, launched on November 28, 1943. The ship was sponsored by Mrs. Ernest L. Gunther, wife of Rear Admiral Ernest L. Gunther, and commissioned the 8th of January, 1945. If you look, a lot of the ships from back in the day seem to follow that same narrative, where the wife somehow was the sponsorer. Interesting that we were able to build such an amazing ship back then, don't you think? So this guy was on the ship out in the middle of who knows where, comes up with the idea March 1st, 1949. April 5th, 1950, he left the Applied Physics Laboratory, which is what he worked for then, to accept a John Smith Guggenheim Foundation Research Fellowship at the Hadron Collider. And then the next year, leaves that job to go be the head of physics, the physics department at the University of Iowa, where it all started. Isn't that an amazing fucking story? Before long, he was enlisting students in his efforts to discover the secrets of the wild blue yonder and inventing ways to carry instruments higher into the atmosphere than ever before. Of course. Why not? This guy was fucking insane. He was capable of all kinds of shit. I mean, he's no Cornelius Drebbel. But hey, who is? Who do you know that can make it thunder and lightning on command? Like officially. Really, really interesting shit. Sorry about that. By 1952, Van Allen was the first to devise a balloon rocket combination that lifted rockets on balloons high above most of the Earth's atmosphere, firing them even higher. The rockets were ignited after the balloons reached an altitude of 16 kilometers. Again, nobody thought about that before. Launching all the rockets and satellites and all the shit that were, all of it. Nobody was like, hey, we attach that to a balloon and light it. That'd go a lot easier, right? As Time magazine later reported, Van Allen's raccoons, rocket balloons, gotcha, raccoons. Look how dumb I am. Could not be fired in Iowa for fear that spent rockets would strike an Iowan or his house. So Van Allen convinced the U.S. Coast Guard to let him fire his raccoons from the icebreaker Eastwind that was bound for Greenland, which we're about to buy, apparently. Totally makes sense. The U.S. is about to own Greenland. Does that become the 51st state, or is there going to be lots of states? Like, how does that even, is that even a thing? How does the U.S. buy Greenland? Aren't we in debt to China by like a gazillion dollars? Do you understand how who owns Greenland now that we can buy it from them? How does that even work? I always wondered how people buy islands. Like something like Epstein Island. We're going to go off on a little bit here. How does Epstein Island exist? If pirates are real, then how does someplace like Epstein Island exist? Or Johnny Depp Island? Or any of that bullshit out there that they tell us these rich people own islands. I mean, if I'm a pirate, right? Arr. And it's like, okay, what's the easiest way to do this? Well, I'm going to go. I mean, especially when the people aren't even supposedly there. I'm sure they have a staff or something that keeps the place, but why aren't pirates consistently attacking famous people's islands and shit? Do you know how much loot they could get? And, like, even if you had a security system, what could they possibly do? You have multiple pirate ships attacking from different angles. A place like Epstein Island, you'd think that would be a fucking prime target. Especially after all this time, you know, Epstein Island still exists, still going. Day before he died, he signed over all of his fucking fortune and everything to 3 men. 2 of which, at least, are dead. I don't know about the third one. But convenient, huh? Epstein Island is still being run by the trust that owns it. And the people of St. Lucia want to buy the shit back, or want their island back, but they can't get it. Don't you think that's weird? How come pirates never attack famous people's islands? All right, we're gonna reset. Try again because I want to hear your comments. I gotta agree. I'm addicted to it. So go get your free download. www.the-builderberg.group.com. It's in the comments, or I mean, it's gonna be in the description. It's free download. Ask you how much you want to pay. You could put $1 bazillion if you want to, or you could put 0 and it's still free. It costs you the same amount. And all we ask is that you share it with someone. There'll also be a link to one of our Facebook videos. So go follow the Facebook page and come back. I'll be back. Then you can talk all the shit you want. Pedophiles? Kill yourself.